Welcome to Arise and Shine podcast. Um, if you haven't seen this podcast before and you don't know me, I suggest that you look at some of the other videos and get a feel for my story. Today, I'm so excited because we're going to be talking about how to create internal safety. And as a survivor of ritual abuse and mind control myself, and my dear friend today that is with us. She is also. I just want to thank her first of all for being here and the honor it is to have her as a friend, but also just coming on today. And would you go ahead then and tell us a little bit about your story first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a real blessing to have you as my friend as well. Yes, I am a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, trauma-based mind control, and used dissociative identity disorder to process through all that, to protect me from all that. There was government involvement in my story on the military front. So there was weaponization, there was a lot of sexual abuse in my family, a lot of uh, religious abuse beyond the satanic ritual abuse. There was a lot of the thick layering of distorted Christianity used to secure programming in place too that I've had to process. um, I had to cut ties with a lot of family members in order to be where I'm at now. But by the grace of God, God is really, I'm very, very blessed with how much He has taken care of me. I am a believer in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. Um, it has been a process to work through that, to work through all the ritual stuff and all the other garbage that comes along with this kind of a history um, to be good with Jesus on that front. And he's helped me so much in this and been so kind and patient with me all the way through. So I give him all the credit for being where I'm at.
As do
And
I. When did you first find out that you had DID or suspected that something was different than
yeah,
just about
something's
you?
going on here that's I need some help. Let's see, I was 26 years old. I'm 44 now. It was I was doing an internship program with a prominent um, Christian organization for a season, and there was a very normal situation that just really, it's the first time I had ever come across this normal situation that triggered me wildly, and it just derailed my system, and I just collapsed. It from the outside, it looked like I was having a psychotic break. And
And
I
sometimes
completely,
it does, but it really
yeah,
it's like a breakthrough.
yeah, right. It's like, oh, all of a sudden, like I went from overnight being in feeling like very supported and a loving environment to all of a sudden like hating everybody, like terrified of everything, hiding in the attic and like shutting down entirely. And it was 3 months of, oh, I described it back then. I said to people, I was like, it feels like I'm 24/7 being raped. It had this level of extreme vulnerability for about 3 months. And then finally the some people in the program are like, I think it's time for you to leave. I said, I think it is too. And unfortunately, I went from an actually safe environment back into I moved in with a family member that was continuing to abuse me and was part of the system. But I knew during that season that like I needed serious help, and the help that I needed, I had never seen. At that point, I knew that I knew that there it was possible to have things happen to you that you didn't know about. And so I'd work through some light level stuff. Like I knew vaguely that I had sexual abuse in my history, and to work through some of those things, but I knew this was a whole other level. And then I was also having these dreams where um, I was multiple people in the dreams. And At first I was thinking, okay, this is just symbolic. This is just symbolic. And then I realized, you know what, I'm not really processing through these dreams really well. And then I'm like, just for fun, let's say I actually am multiple people. Because I was feeling so nuts at this point. I got this book from the bookstore. It said 50 signs of mental illness. And I'm reading through this big old thick thing. I'm like, check, 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 check. And I'm like, but none of these by themselves fit. And I know I don't have all of it. This is weird. And there was one little tiny paragraph that said, that was about, and that's this book, they called it multiple personality disorder. And the author of that book was like, some people think this is real, but it's not. And I read that. I was like, you're full of it. I know you're wrong. So I was like, just for fun, what if I am multiple? And I I did this thing where I went back into my dream that I had the night before, where I was multiple people, and I said, you know what? What if that other me is a different me? And then all of a sudden, I could feel the switching, and I almost passed out. And I ran into the bathroom and kind of did that thing again, and I saw the change in the mirror. I was like, oh shit, this is real. And
Wow.
then and then that was when I had the breakthrough of being able to realize, okay, in the dreams, I was interacting with these other parts of me. And I was able to start getting some progress and start getting some internal relief with some stuff, that all these emotions that I was going on. I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. And so I'm self-diagnosed. I never had anybody in the mental health world actually diagnose me. I've told people, I'm like, you can't tell me I'm not, because I know better than that. So, okay. I'm like, all right. But I've never had anybody actually diagnose me.
I don't think you needed it because here you are having these dreams about multiple people and then
Yeah.
reading a book that, well, that's probably isn't a multiple personality because maybe that doesn't even exist, but you're like
Yeah.
telling,
You're an
almost like
idiot.
telling that author,
I did. I was like, it was like I was talking to the author saying, you're an idiot.
what do you know? Right.
Yeah. But that kicked off my journey.
So even though you weren't diagnosed by a clinician, you knew. And I love how when I've felt this too, like in my own journey, where it feels like you're going nuts and you feel nuts. And it's like you feel like you're going to have a breakdown, but it's really a breakthrough, just like what you
Yeah.
described. Here
Yeah.
you were triggered in an internship program, and you knew something, was going
Yeah.
on. Something was different because you had this normal time period, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what
I'm
did
like,
you
this is nuts.
Yeah. So what did you do then? And would you say that when you were triggered in that internship program, that that was kind of like a turning point for you? That um,
It was a huge wake up call that I had a
wake up
lot
call.
of deep stuff that I needed to work on. Up until that point, I had dealt with a lot of low grade abuse issues. I say that tongue in cheek because abuse is abuse, and it all does damage, you know.
Very
And
true.
I had spent the previous 4 years working with most. I've had very unconventional pathway processing through this stuff. So I worked with an Elijah House counselor, and that's a Christian Bible-based inner healing ministry program. I highly recommend it for anybody looking to address things on a biblically based level. There are other programs that other approaches, other ministries that are kind of in the same vein. I didn't experience those personally, but I know there are others that do kind of the same track as Elijah House Ministries. Um,
And I can
but
put the description, in the link in the description.
yeah. Um, so I had already processed through. I knew that the daily life stuff that I was conscious about in my family history, in my family of origin, was very toxic and abusive, and I'd already kind of realized it kind of felt like a cult. there are aspects of it like this is kind of like dealing with a cult. And there are aspects of religious abuse that were there. And I knew there was a sexual abuse in there too. I knew my dad was a piece of this. And and I had already processed through a lot of that superficial stuff with other siblings on that level with Elijah House Ministries. And then I hit this wall that said, "Go deeper."
Huh?
and and I also had a series of dreams that correlated with this. God speaks to me a lot through my dreams, and it's been a pretty significant aspect of my process. But one of the dreams I had was that I was in this house with my siblings, and I knew under the floorboards there was something really, really awful there that needed attention. And I could feel this incredible sense of urgency and incredible sense of darkness and evil and grossness to it. Like there was I managed to get open like one little slat and looking under the floorboards. I'm like, oh, I have to look at this. We have, and I kept telling my siblings, we have to look at this. We have to look at this. And then I went into there and did some stuff. And then when I came out, I was even more, we have to look at this. And then my siblings were like, you just stop, just stop. And there were other dreams where I was like in a maze and things like that, other images that spoke to the programming and ritual abuse and how my siblings were responding as well. Um, but by the grace of God, like uh, I was provided with some good tools, foundational tools to kind of help start looking at what it means to create internal safety, you know, and which is what we want to talk about today. So your DID, now what?
Yeah,
So
so that's
ask,
amazing though that sorry, I interrupted you.
uh, go ahead.
I was just thinking how here you are, like, I've got to look at this, and your siblings are like, no, no. And so obviously you went ahead because you
Yeah.
you've progressed quite a bit from there. So like what did you do then, like from that point on, so that you could connect with those parts of you? And I know you said dreams is the way that God speaks to you, like, and then to start to connect with those people or the parts of your mind
Yeah.
that obviously were there.
Yeah. So there was an initial phase of like trying to get to know the crew, so to speak, of like, okay, who's in here? And create a roster of parts and whatnot. And I got after about a year of that kind of stuff, I was like, this internal world is too whack. I can't keep up with the names. But I did hold on to some. There were some core tools that I learned in that process of being um, accepting different parts and realizing, okay, when I can um, connect emotionally with another part, um, I can feel what they feel and kind of get a vibe of like what's going on with them. And I had to learn how to not be judgmental with myself, because the part that was kind of running the show and leading the way on the inner healing process was pretty Christianized, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I was using that tool in a very unhealthy way internally. And so I had to learn how to be kind to my parts. And it was a lot of um, trying to find the lowest, what I call the lowest common denominator. Like there's something common to every single part in my system. And that is they want me to stay alive and safe. They want me safe. And I started to learn that there were different parts that were basically whatever situation I was in, there was this deep process going on in the back of my brain saying, who has the biggest stick in the room? I want a bout of that. And so I would, if I were in a Christian setting, I'd put on all my Christian parts because that God has the biggest stick in the room. Jesus has the biggest stick in the room. Whereas if I'm in these other settings, that other thing has the biggest stick in the room, I'm going to kowtow to that. And so kind of finding that common denominator of I want to be safe, and starting to um, um, one of the therapists that are counselor ministers that I work with, they had a phrase called "get off the Jesus bus."
Had the same people.
Oh yeah. So the phrase "get off the Jesus bus" was like, I was thinking, okay, I want to get everybody in myself to believe in Jesus. So we're gonna make everybody believe in Jesus. That did not work out so well. Because I
Doesn't.
did have some input of like, oh, you got to make sure that you bring every part of you to Christ and get them to say the be saved and say the salvation prayer. And that's actually not how it works. Certainly did
Mm-mm.
not work for me.
Me either.
And because the reality is that when God honors your will, and when you have broken will, he still honors your will. But at the same time, when Jesus died on the cross for us, he died for every part of you. He already paid the price. And even though things were super crazy and I got to a place where I couldn't be around Christians at all, I had to run away from church. I was like, you like Jesus? Get away. I couldn't even pray in my own mind if I whispered in my brain too loud. It was like I could say like 3-word prayers in a teeny tiny whisper in the corner of my brain before I got pummeled by other parts. So I had to learn a very religiously neutral way to look at myself. And that was saying, all of me is important. Every single part of me is important, and my emotions matter. And I need to get off this idea of trying to force my emotions to align with a religion.
Very well
And
said.
so and that's part of the thing about this kind of abuse is we just want to know what the right thing is to do in order to be okay. And the people around us, they want us to look pretty. So, okay, we'll chop ourselves up inside to make sure that we can do this so that way we're safe. The other people out there, they think we're cool. All right. But unfortunately, internally, you're still stressed out because you're having to play this game, running around. So,
I had a part that I would call the church lady. And the same people that you're talking about that I got intensive ministry with were like, they said the same thing, like, we're going to get off the Jesus bus. We're going to get off the Luciferian bus. And it was like, my church lady was like, no, 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 we have to go to church. We have to read our Bible. We have to pray. We have to do
yeah,
this. And so it's like, as long as that part was trying to dominate, really, for me, it was like those other parts did not get to even have a choice with what we believed, and the damage that's done spiritually with God and Jesus and Lucifer, Satan.
yeah,
So it's like I loved how you were like, okay, this we can do this differently, and let's look at all the emotions that are going on. And because when there's trauma, and especially with the kind that we've both had, it's like emotions are not even allowed to
yeah,
express, much less find. And so part of what you're talking about in creating that internal safety is to we gotta even know what we're feeling, and
yeah.
who's feeling it. And you want to talk more about from getting that base? Okay, we got parts here now. Uh, what do we do?
Yeah,
What did you do then?
yeah. One of the things I do want to kind of touch on are the church lady part and the part that really wants to hold on to our faith in Jesus. Um, that part had to find a new way to receive grace. Is really what it came down to. That part had to come down to realize, okay, I don't have to put on an act with God. God still accepts me even when this other stuff is here. And so when I learned that God still accepts, I need my puppets. When I learned that God still accepts me, even if when this other stuff is here, and when He said it's okay for me to let this in, I was able to be able to do that. That was a piece of it. Like I needed to continue to be okay with God, even though sometimes it felt like I had to put on the rebellion pants. Like I didn't want to be rebellious in that regard. That was part of my heart,
And
and I
God had
didn't
to
want it.
minister to
Hey, there you
the little
go.
sheep that didn't know him yet,
Yeah, a little
that
finger
had been
puppet.
hurt so badly. I loved the
Yeah,
finger puppet thing.
yeah. So there's a lot of recognizing that, or growing to learn experientially and viscerally, that it's okay if I feel and think, insert everything here.
Yeah, like
And
whatever.
yeah, yeah. And um, as um, in child development, you need that. Um, the child brain needs the adult brain to learn how to wire and to come back from joy, or come back to joy uh, from a place of emotional distress. And there's neurological stuff that goes on with all that. Um, but the adult brain is supposed to let the child experience these crazy wild emotions. Say, it's okay, they got all these crazy wild emotions, mom's still here, I love you, it's great. Now that you've kind of see, look, can your brain capture on that I'm okay and you can be okay too. Okay. And so there was a lot of me doing that kind of thing with God on that front. And so as I learned that God's okay with it, I was able to start to turn and do that toward myself, and start to realize, like, okay, I it's okay for me to just hold my parts and say, what do you feel? I know you were feeling a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame put on you, but sometimes I would speak this out. I disagree with shame. I refuse to shame you for whatever it is I refuse to shame you. I refuse to agree with those words that was spoken over you. I will hold on to that for you. So there was creating a part in me that could hold on to truth for these other parts, and then say, look, I know you don't believe that now, but I'm going to hold on to this for you, and I'm going to speak that. And then that created insta bond in my system to be like, oh, good. Thank God I can let go of this and start that healing process, and to build that resilience of how big of an emotion can I do that with? And that
Yes.
made way to start listening to the stories.
Hmm. So for people that maybe they've newly diagnosed with DID, or they're having similar things going on, like there's more than one of us, I think,
Yeah.
just like you, whether they're self-diagnosed or diagnosed by a psychiatrist or whatever. So like I myself had horrific self-hatred, and like talking about like creating internal safety and connecting with the parts and the emotions, like I had to stop hating me, all of me. So
Yeah.
earlier on in that journey where you're having these breakthroughs of the wake up call that you talked about, and trying to normalize, okay, this is my new normal. uh,
Yeah.
so what did you do to be able to even accept that you had parts, and then do what you said you were doing, like with, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
like going from self-hatred?
yeah, yeah.
Did
Like,
you have that too?
oh, absolutely. And for me, how I would describe it is that you've got, if this is all of you, your hand, and then you're split. there are wedges that get stuck between you that keep you split. You can have self-hatred be one of those wedges. Shame can be one of those wedges. Denial can be one of those wedges. And the other stuff can be these wedges between those parts. And you have to kind of, or guilt can be in
Anger.
there as well. Yeah, anger, because a lot of times it's really hard for people to be okay with anger. So that's its own thing. And then there's like, I'm getting off a little rabbit trail here. Anger is
Fine.
a secondary emotion can stem from like multiple different sources. You can be angry because you're deeply ashamed and don't know how to deal with it. You can be angry because you're deeply in pain and you don't know how to deal with it. You're just trying to like keep a lid on it with anger. You can be feels intense guilt and put anger on it because you don't know how to deal with it. Vulnerability, whatever. All that, you can have a whole bunch of different things underneath anger. But what I found is that once I looked at anger, and this actually translates to all this other stuff too. I started noticing coping mechanisms. Like I would just like try to go catatonic and just TV, just to get everything to stop. Or something just to get all the sound, all the noise to stop, loud music or something, doing something kind of obsessively, these like addictive type behaviors that are very numbing behaviors. And I would realize I ended up starting smoking too. I was never a smoker. And all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, I desperately wanted to smoke. And I would chain smoke. I'd have like 8 cigarettes in like half an hour. And I had this, and this is from the Lord too. I know that he did this because I talked to my therapist years later, and they're like, how did you know to do that? It takes us years to get a lot of the people we work with to figure out that you need to do this. I had an awareness that those things are just symptoms. If I try to go around and try to say, oh, I need to stop the smoking and try to keep chopping that off, I'm wasting my energy because there's a deeper issue underneath. And
Yes.
the analogy that comes to mind, if you lived in any area that has big winters and big snowstorms in the wintertime, at the beginning of the season, you put those tall sticks out with like the orange reflective stuff on them, and you put them around the edge of your driveway and your walkway so you know where to plow, right? And
Yeah.
so I knew like, okay, I had all this stuff packed down, but I'd see these little sticks of like addiction, too much TV over here, smoking, excessive working out, whatever it was, sleeping all the time, staying awake, whatever it is. You pick a thing, you'll figure it out how to make it, how to turn it into coping. I knew that there were these things were showing me, dig here. Dig here. There's something underneath there. And I remember this telling somebody, I'm like, I love my addictions. They let me know I have a problem. Which in the world of DID, when you're so disconnected from yourself, you need something to kind of smack you in the face a little bit, like, oh, there's something I need to look at. And then another, our therapist, she used to say, they used to say, it's like a paper ball, having somebody chuck a paper ball at you to try to get your attention from across the room. Who's throwing that paper ball? There's something here that I need to pay attention to. And so I had a sense like, okay, I had these crazy emotions that are through the roof. And there's something that's happened deep down that warrants this measure of a response in my emotions. That was a big thing to make sure, like, okay, I feel this up here. It didn't happen from this little tiny thing here. It happened from something really freaking huge. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to trust that my emotions are there for a reason and go to the deepest, darkest, most vulnerable, most hurt, most messed up parts and talk to them. That I think is key to make your way down to the deepest, darkest, most vulnerable parts. And this is counterintuitive. To put this, I will share this one dream that I had because I think this will stick with people. And this dream I had, and this was at the front end of dealing with stuff. I didn't realize I was dissociated. This was while I was still at the internship program. So it's around that time, and I was starting to really fall apart, and everybody else was like, hmm. But I had this dream where I was in this mall walking along, everything's normal, and there was this huge billboard that everyone could see. And it was a picture of like this business corporate meeting room. And everybody was there in their fancy business suits, sitting all proper. And there was this one guy in the middle of the conference table wearing this orange, grody, grimy jumpsuit who was on fire. He was not dressed for work. And he was just like, one of these things is not like the other. But there was a huge slogan underneath it that says, use propane, not alcohol. Propane. Go towards the pain, don't numb.
Wow.
Use propane, not alcohol. Go toward the pain, don't numb.
That had to come from God.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so.
Pro pain.
Propane.
And that's what we want to do when all that stuff's happening. We want to avoid, 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 avoid
Yes.
because
Yes.
it hurts, it hurts,
Yes.
it hurts.
Yes. And that said, there is something to say for learning how to modulate that to keep it in a range where you can manage it. Because it can easily go to that place where you're like, you just go psychotic, And so learning how to
Because it's
like,
too much.
yeah, learning how to practice. How close can I get to this part right now? I want to go there. I can get this close and process the emotions there. I got to pull back and just breathe, take a break, go make a smoothie, go play with Legos, take a walk on the beach, ride a tricycle, whatever, and then come back. It's okay to take breaks to replenish and refuel to be able to go back into deeper into the pain. Because in the pain is where you're going to find, you got this big old nugget, this big old ball of emotion, but also in there is the story and the lies that you believed about yourself and God and others in there. And you need those. The story will help you figure out what the lies are. And once you can break off those lies, this is where my toolbox from that I gained from Elijah House Ministries really helped, because forgiveness plays a role. It doesn't mean getting them off the hook. It means putting the perpetrators on God's hook. It's a choice. It's not about your emotions. It's about getting yourself in a clean space where God can really heal you. So there's some learning to get inside that pain ball, look at the story and figure out what lies what have I been believing about myself, about God, about others because of this thing, and getting truth there. In the Bible, it talks about, God, you want truth in the inmost places. You desire truth in the inmost places. And this is where it's at. This is like the inmost place, right in there, in that big old pain ball. And then as you process that, the pain dissipates, it goes away, everything gets brought into order. And I found I was coming back out of that being like, oh, way more refreshing. I was like, super energized after that. Because now it's like, oh yeah, I just got rid of a big bag of rocks.
that whole coping mechanisms that popped up, just like you said, you went from not smoking to I'm smoking 8 cigarettes here. Uh,
Yeah,
and it's like, I loved how you were able to like think about it as like, okay, this needs to come down, like,
yeah,
and we can balance the coping mechanisms, whether we call them addictions or whatever. But
yeah,
I think it's important as Christians because we do have those parts of us that want to have all the parts of us have faith in Jesus, that it's like we need to allow those other parts to have the experience of emotions and stuff first, and then, managing the coping mechanisms. Not
yeah,
so much like we got to get help for this addiction, which that could happen too, because if,
yeah, yeah,
but it's like the emotions are so intense because we haven't even been able to go there yet. And it's like all these parts are like,
yeah,
what do we do with these emotions? And so learning how to identify and connect with the parts who are having these really, really intense
hmm,
emotions.
yeah,
Something that can help our listeners is that emotions will peak and they feel like they're going to last
phenomenal.
forever, but they do come back down again.
Yes, yes, they do. They do. Um, there are a couple other things that went through my head. Um, as you were saying all this stuff, my brain goes nuts thinking about all this, like, oh, this and this
Yeah,
and
I know, I know.
this,
Me
all this stuff
too.
that's to say. Um,
And you were mentioning forgiveness and the
yeah,
lies,
the
and
lies. It's something to keep in mind is like going through this process. Like, it's not like I woke up one day, I knew I was DID, and then everything was like, da, 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 da. I definitely had waves of denial that I had to fight through because every time for a few years, every time I came across a new part, I'm like, what? How the heck are you me? And um and it got to a point where I needed to separate myself with some family members because I couldn't handle their denial on top of my own. Just that alone, I was like, you know what? You don't want to deal with the denial. I just need to shut you off because my own denial stuff is plenty on my own plate. You stay over there. I got my own shit to deal with. you
yeah,
know,
that's enough right there.
yeah. And there's a growth process of really learning through this that God cares about all of me, every single teeny tiny part, every single teeny tiny part he cares about. And um he is so gentle in how he processes through that. He doesn't it's not about reliving things. It's about just getting the nugget you need to to connect with the enough of the event to connect with the lies that you need. That's really all you need. So if you get those three parts together, the emotion, the event, and then the lies. The emotions and the lies are the bigger piece. Knowing the event can be kind of, you know, you need to know enough to know how the emotions link with the lies. Does that make sense? Um, I know you're nodding. I can't hear
I'm
any of my
nodding.
audience nodding.
Exactly.
Hey, you. Are you nodding? It's my first time doing this. Like, oh. Um, but those are the three pieces, and the important, really, the most critical piece is being able to undo the lies and find new truth there. And so there's a measure of uh, an amount of the emotion that you need to connect with it to know viscerally that it's yours. And this actually plays in with body stuff because our bodies for me, my body was a witness to the reality of these things. Like I could feel in my body, like as I'm trying on this, like I'm like, okay, there's this part in front of me telling me you've told me this story about blah blah blah. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, all right, I'm going to try this on for size. And I could feel in my body the anxiety, the rage, the terror, the shame, the whatever. I could feel it in my body. And then as I addressed it, my body was just, oh, thank God that's gone. And I would
It
say,
would
you
be
know
a
what?
relief.
Yeah, I could feel everything flush out and my body, like the tension in my body, just poof. And I was way less tense in my body after, as well as my emotions afterward. And that to me was like, you know what? If I have a pain in my arm and I put a band-aid on it and it doesn't fix anything, if I have pain in my arm and I, uh, you know, put some oil on it and it doesn't fix anything, but if I have pain in my arm and then I reset a bone and then, ah, thank you. Now I can go about my day and my healing. Did I have a broken bone? To me, like that, like when I addressed the issue for what I was told that it was and got the healing, that to me was confirmation that yeah, that really happened. That really happened.
Yeah, when you connect your emotions to your
Yeah,
body, to what
yeah,
that part of you remembers, even if, like you said, you don't get the whole every
yeah,
single thing that happened, and then you can get to the lie underneath. Um, Speaking of body stuff, I think of the peaking emotions that are so big and the body responses that happen as a result, if we can remember to breathe and because our heart is racing and the
yeah,
breathing is faster. And for our listeners, if they can remember to breathe,
yeah. I feel like that's a
get
lot
the
of like,
body stuff back
yeah,
down
that's
to
a lot of
normal.
like dealing with the gas brake and being able to kind of modulate how close you are to things and how overwhelmed you are. Like for me, I actually have to practice stopping to breathe. This is weird. This is
No,
weird.
tell us about it.
So in my body, I'll find that I can actually feel different spots. Like my right shoulder and my right hip are two aspects of programming issues. Like I know that when I'm dealing with certain kinds of programming issues, I feel it in my right shoulder, and my right shoulder get really dysfunctional and just weird. Same thing with my right hip. I'll feel this super tension and pain in my right hip. But when I kind of connect with the body part internally, and I'm a massage therapist and body worker by trade, so I do a lot of stuff with somato emotional release and cranial sacral therapy. Wonderful stuff to help address the stuff, by the way. Um, if I connect to that part of my body and ask what's going on there, I'll start hearing things and feel things release, and all of a sudden, oh, thank God, my shoulder feels a lot better. But I'll also find that things will get wicked intense and I'll actually have to hold my breath in order to like create enough tension in order for it to release and pop and break through. Um, and sometimes it's hard enough that I have to actually take another breath because I'm like going hypoxic, but for some reason in my body, like holding my breath is a factor to helping the emotions to release from my tissues, which every time I'm in body work, like keep breathing. I'm like, I'm going to hold it a little longer. Okay, there we go.
Yes, because you're connecting with your body by doing
Yeah,
what you said you do. And
yeah, yeah,
a lot of times the body, well, the body is disconnected from us with mind control. And we're taught to live outside of our body, leaving our body, and not connecting with our body or our emotions. But it's like sometimes the body stuff, just like what you're saying, needs to be addressed so that it's like, even if we just say, thank you, my talking to my arm, thank you for letting me know something that I need to connect with. And
yeah,
thanking that part of me for doing what it does and what it has done all these years, for me, and what do you need? Even if we're
Yeah,
talking to that and connecting with that body part,
yes,
it's connected to our mind and our emotions.
absolutely, absolutely. And on that same note, like I had this experience. I mean, I was, standard story stuff of, ritual abuse. I had to use my right arm for something really horrific. And some of these stories were coming up during the season years ago. And um, I was having like a really heavy emotional day where I was just like oozing negative emotions. It was just like coming out of my pores, like detoxing all those emotions. So I was like crying all the time. And I went into the kitchen and I lifted my arm to get a glass of water. And visually in front of my arm, like all of a sudden, poof, my arm disappeared. And I literally couldn't see it right in front of my face. As a
Wow.
result, my brain literally forgot it was there and my arm dropped. It slammed on the counter, and that physical snap on the counter reminded my brain, oh, you have an arm. And it came back.
It's really
because,
incredible.
because I had that level of disconnection with my body
Yes.
that I couldn't see it right in front of me. And my
I
brain
have
was like, oh, it's not there.
I believe you. I have I knew a survivor who she was able to she was so disconnected from her body, and then as she did what we do to recover and connect, then that became better. But she could literally, and she forgot one day, she was so disconnected from her body, she forgot to use a hot pad, and she grabbed the casserole dish or the cookies, whatever she was
Yeah.
baking, and she did not even get burnt. That was
Oh,
how disconnected she was.
wow.
And I
That's nuts.
I have
But
never been that
real
disconnected,
story, true. That's a true story. I mean, we hear
but it's
stories of
true.
dissociates. I like to call us dissociates.
Yes. Yeah.
we well, you can see some of the literature dissociate being like one part has asthma and the other parts don't. One part needs as diabetes and one part needs glasses and the other ones don't.
Yeah.
It's crazy the amount of stuff, and unfortunately some of that is by training. There are
Yes, it
programmers
is.
who know that the body mind is capable of doing this, and they're like, we want
Mhm.
that. We're going to do shit to this person in order to get that, so that we have a super soldier, super spy. you know it's awful. I
It
didn't
is
know I
awful.
was pregnant, and then I had a forced abortion that it was blamed on a family member. And it was that's my pregnancy was I was a teenager, 17, I think.
I'm
And
so sorry.
it was blamed on my brother. And another authority figure said, hey, you need to perform an abortion on your sister because it's your fault. So they used my pregnancy as a big leverage for him. They performed an at-home abortion on me by somebody who didn't know what they were doing in order to help that person stay safe. It gets really messy when you got multiple people involved. But
Yes.
another component of being disconnected from your body. I had parts that were outside of my body. That was their job, was to stay outside of my body.
Yes.
And once God, Holy Spirit brought them back in my body, that was a whole other weird experience. I had two severe ones, and one of them, it was bad enough where when that part came back in my body, it was like 2 or 3 days of me walking into walls and tables and chairs because I could not get the physical realm. I was like,
Right.
what? How come I can't go through this thing? Like, because I was so used to being outside of my body, just, and now I was
Hmm.
stuck in this physical body. I was like, what the heck? It was like irritating and like
Yeah.
surprising. How am I right? Oh, I guess I'm gotta learn how to run into things. Like I gotta walk
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah. Those
Oh,
parts are literally trained to
I'm a
not,
female.
yeah, those parts are literally trained to not go into the body. And
Yes.
their whole role, their whole existence is to stay up
Yeah.
here above the
Yeah.
body.
And unfortunately, that's a major part of that is this taps into other spiritual warfare stuff, the real nasty spiritual stuff that they do in ritual abuse and mind control stuff, is that they want you out of your body so they can put other powers in there. It's sort of like forced squatting, like, hey, you get out of your house, how about you go on vacation over there, take a vacation over there, and while you're on vacation, we're going to stay in your house and we're going to do stuff with your house.
The safest place
Yeah,
that
is
any of us, all the viewers can be, is in our
in your
body
body. Yeah, it's
and
your
connecting,
body,
like
is
what you're
your
talking
body, it is
about.
your right to be in it, and
Yes.
no other being has to be in it. And Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit will kick everybody out if you need help.
And
Because see,
connecting to our body. Yeah, amen to that. Connecting with our body feels so foreign, just like what you said. You're bumping into walls, and these
yeah,
parts are needing to learn how to. Oh, we have a body,
yeah,
and one of the things that I experienced in that process with parts that were just like, no, we cannot be in this body. It's not safe. It's not safe. And it wasn't safe in the past for them,
yeah,
was to learn how to do it, like not just fully, because that was too much,
yeah,
and one of the triggers was to be feeling body pain because of something else
yeah,
happening, like a
yeah,
surgery or whatever that triggers it. And it's just like, that's connecting with the part that's like, no, no, that's not safe. We can't do this.
yep,
And then
yep,
learning how to allow that part to have some access to the body, but not
yeah,
maybe fully. Uh,
yeah. And helping that part to learn how to modulate physical pain too,
yes.
and to release the memory of the physical pain, because your tissues can hold on to the physical memory of the pain or the experience that you had. And so there's stuff there are things you can do to kind of facilitate that. Cranial sacral therapy and somatoemotional release or body work things I would suggest for that. You can look into that. Other ones are trauma release exercises by David Berceli. It's again, uh, uh, they're simple little exercises that activate a natural um, flushing out of energy from a fight or flight situation. So what happens is these are good books to read on these topics. Are The Body Keeps a Score by what's his name? Uh,
Vanderkolk?
yes, Bessel van der Kolk. Bessel van der Kolk, that's a good one to kind of dig into and start to realize your body's important. And then two, David Berceli's trauma release exercises are um, he's on YouTube too as well. David Berceli and the TRE exercises.
How do you spell
Uh,
David's last name? Do you know?
Berceli.
Vercelli?
Berceli, yeah.
Burr.
Berceli, yeah.
Okay.
So B is in bicycle.
Thank you. I
Um,
can link those in the description too.
yeah. So David Berceli, his work was, he realized that he did stuff all around the world in a bunch of different cultures, and he found this same thing that happened to everybody who had severe issues. And he had a lot of the work that he did was with refugees, and realizing like, here these guys are in traumatic situations, and they found that their bodies would start doing this tremoring thing, this shaking thing. And you actually see this in the wild. You'll see this in a wild, that when an antelope is being chased by a lion, they'll do their thing and run as fast as they can. But then when they get to safety, they lay on the ground and they just shake. They just shake and release all the energy out. And our bodies can do that too. And we can, if we don't, we often will try to hold on to that and to prevent the shaking. But these exercises actually help to stimulate the shaking, to induce that tremor response, to help flush out the stored up tension in your body.
Yeah, and it's something you have to learn how to do because all of that stuff that didn't get to release, like the animal in the wild, needs can sometimes be there for generations before
Yeah.
we start to allow any of that to, be released from our body.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the work that people have done to,
Yeah.
like the body keeps the
On different,
score
yeah,
and
on different fronts of this. And even I'm finishing up nutrition school. Even on a nutritional level, our bodies have ways to, every time we release hormones in our body, they get used up, and now then our liver has to flush them all out. Used up. So cortisol, you dump out all this cortisol on your body, then your liver, your body has to say, all right, we don't need any more cortisol. Let's get rid of it. You have to have keep your body running smoothly in order to be able to efficiently flush out the used up hormones. And that also goes for, used up neurotransmitters, estrogen, testosterone, all these other hormones. Once the signals have been used up, our bodies have a way to kind of flush that out. And if that process gets jacked up, then you have this buildup of this stuff in your body. Like, what do I do with this? And it, kind of like not having your trash taken out.
yeah.
So,
And as we learn all these things, and thank you for giving people tools that they can be using. It's learning the tools, putting the toolbox together, the toolkit, and then trying these things, like identifying with the emotions and connecting with our emotions because they're so big, and then connecting with our body, connecting with how we can then release that stuff. That's so stored in every cell of our being. In all
yeah,
of this, I think of how intricately we are made, fearfully and wonderfully made when we talk about, it's a mind thing because it's mind control with those of us who have had this type of abuse, but anybody with DID because of sexual abuse or, the different
mind splitting
things.
abuse,
Yes,
mind
it's
splitting trauma.
abuse.
Yeah,
And there's no comparison. There's no like, this is worse than this.
yeah,
Abuse
yeah,
affects us in all of those parts of
yeah,
us. And as we learn the new tools and identify with the emotions and then connect with those parts of us and do something different, those railroad track, uh, like the same, doing the same thing, like same coping mechanisms, same default reactions and stuff that our body has, and we make those new neural pathways, and
yes, yes,
and
yeah.
that's all a process too.
It is so wonderful, like that neuroplasticity. Oh, thank you, God, for neuroplasticity. That our brains are able to make new neural pathways throughout our life, and so you're not SOL. There is no measure of programming that is unchangeable because your brain, you can learn new pathways. And I'm definitely a big fan of using different tools. It's especially helpful because it's like, okay, I'm overwhelmed looking at stuff from this angle. How about I take a break and start nourishing myself from this other angle over here? And just keeping this flow and this zigzagging of, yeah, putting it
Creating,
all together.
yeah, creating an internal safety. There's so much involved with it. And earlier today, before we got on this podcast, you and I were talking, and you were mentioning, like an internal strength journey similar to like somebody that's working out. Like you need to do certain things that are more basic and that you can handle before you do like bench pressing or whatever. Um,
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I also coach CrossFit for a while, and in conjunction with massage therapy, I think about learning new healthy movement patterns before you start putting weight on your on your barbell. So you want to make sure that you are moving well before you start stacking on weight, in the fitness realm, in the athletic realm. Same thing here. You've got like the holy grail of this horrific trauma thing that you kind of reverse engineered. That's there a little bit. You see the signs of it. I think there's something really nasty there, but you can't get there yet. Start here with like learning how to deal with the disappointment of having cold coffee when you wanted hot coffee. Start small, learning how to be okay with negative emotion and return to joy from that. Return from a little bit bigger, return to joy from that. A little bit bigger, learn how to return to joy from that. And then in the process of this, there's another component we haven't addressed at all, is building your interpersonal network outside of building relationships with other people that are, excuse me, that are supportive and helpful and nourishing and safe and good. Like, because you want to get away from the bad guys, and then you also have to have somewhere to go. And so also starting to lay the groundwork to building positive relationships with people outside of you to help you with that. Because that's what you want to do. You're starting a new garden. You got a crap ton of rocks in there, all these boulders and whatnot. Just start removing some boulders, and then like, okay, I got this little teeny tiny patch of ground. I'm going to plant some good seeds here. All right, so I got my therapist and maybe like that one person that I can chat with every now and then about this stuff. Okay, I know I'm okay. And then it slowly expands and it slowly expands. Building those relationships as well is another piece of the puzzle of gaining your
Yeah.
internal strength and building, and they will help you to process through, because when you're hurt relationally, you need relationship to help heal you.
Yes. And
You need to
abuse
have
is done in the context of an abusive relationship with one or many people in our
yeah,
case. And so shifting from abuse people and being able to even get close enough to healthy
yeah, yeah,
relationships. There's
yeah.
so much safety then in developing those relationships, and that's a whole process too
Oh
of
yeah,
like learning to trust and, just
yeah,
allowing people in. But
yes.
that does create the internal safety
It
when,
definitely bolsters that. It definitely bolsters
yes,
that, because then you have that sounding board of like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not
exactly.
crazy that that's messed up.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, and you live in that world. You have to decide everything. This is all that it is. This is the reality. This is true. But then you have to get outside and you have somebody tell you, no, that's messed up. See, that's a huge thing, is find someone to remind you, don't be gaslit. That's messed up.
And when they hear you and believe you, and then you can look
Yeah.
and say, they really did this to me. The walls of
Yes.
denial come down,
Yes, that
and
really
then you
helped.
can look above it. That part of you can look above that and it's like, oh, this really happened. This person really believes me. Maybe I can believe the next part that I connect with. And it
Yes.
kind of creates like this internal
Yes.
ball rolling. Like
Yes.
I think of the pro pain, like, hey, we got through this memory
Yeah.
and we identified this lie. We felt the pain, and it came back down again. And it's like, oh, now we can together look at this next thing.
Yes. Yes. And it's a little bit like playing Risk, where you conquer this country, then you get some more armies, and you can conquer another country, get more armies, and then once, oh, I got all of Europe. All right, I get more armies. Slowly work your way through it.
And then
But yes,
finding healthy things that you can do on the outside of you too. I mean, I have tons of stuffed animals like around me. So my parts have learned to like connect with things that feel safe to them. But like, I was thinking of like when like you went from 8 cigarettes or whatever, like I gotta have a distraction. I gotta cope. I have to have something to cope with, whether it's a video game, and then you're doing an all-night video game or whatever.
Masturbation.
Yeah, anything
It
can
can get way
become,
worse than that. We all know it could go way worse than that.
yes. But it's like finding a balance of it all, because when we can choose healthy things that are good for us and good for all of us, then we can learn, oh, okay, I'm going to therapy, I'm learning how to deal with emotions, I'm doing all this body stuff and eating good nutrition and stuff. And then it's like, now what can we do so we can actually feel good pleasure that brings us joy, good things to, there's people, relationships, but like hobbies or things that we weren't allowed to do that feel
Yeah,
good to us.
just be like, all right, well, now that I'm alive and I'm not being tortured all the time. Now, what do I do in the world then you're not being tortured? What's life like? Actually, it's kind of cool hanging out by the pool. Actually, it's kind of cool playing pickleball or whatever, finding something to do that nourishes your body, your mind, your spirit, and getting connected with people that will do that. And that all there's it's a transition of learning, getting enough internal strength to say no to bad and to say yes to good. So there's a actively saying I am going to refuse to connect with these kinds of people. Like there's another thread of process that worked through this is I kept finding that I would periodically come across they were usually women where uh well, I connect with them really strongly, and then all of a sudden they're like in my face. And I'm like, whoa, dude. And it felt like
Too
they were
close.
worshiping me. It felt like they wanted so much out of me that, and this happened multiple times. It happened like 4 or 5 times with a few years in between. It was like, what the hell? It's like all of a sudden, like, what the heck is happening? So I learned to recognize the signs of like, this person is having some weird attachment issues. I need to say no. I need to say no to this person. And I got sucked into it because I kept thinking, oh, well, there's nothing wrong. They're being nice. They like me. We have this stuff in common. I kept being like, oh, everything's great. Oh, this feels terrible, but I don't see anything wrong. And so there's a process of learning to trust your gut with relationships when you come across a new person, because we have these old methods of like, well, this feels familiar. So, and this warped thing in our brain that's like, well, I don't see anything going on wrong. And your gut's like, backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. And so the process of growing to trust your gut and being and stepping into yourself to say no to new relationships that are not going to be good, and also
Yes,
saying no to old relationships that are not good. That's obviously extra hard with family members, you know
right. It is.
but you have to, there will come a point that the more you are able to say no to the relationships that are toxic and that are sucking you back into denial, sucking you back into unhealthy cycles. And the person that you come across may not be like tied to the cult or anything. Some of them are, but some of them are they're just unhealed people. They're just garden variety weirdos, unhealthy people, you
And we
know.
all have family dysfunction that we,
Yeah, well, everybody's got their problems, but sometimes the particular flavor of problem that somebody has, issue, that unresolved stuff that somebody has, like really gets us in a weird place. And it's okay to say, for me and my personal sanity, I need to not let that into my house. Here's my boundary right here. And learning, being able to say no to the things that are not good helps you to be able to say yes to the things that are good, to make that conscious
yeah,
switch and change the tide of how your life goes, and to
yeah,
increase that sense of agency that you actually are in
Mhm.
charge of who you let in your life.
Yeah. And with abuse like what we've had, it's like we couldn't say no to any of it. And we had to do what the abusers said, or there was literally life and death attached to saying no. But when we get in a safer spot and we can say no to our abusers, we can say no to other people and yes to us because we're not supposed to have needs and we need to connect with the fact that we do have
Yeah.
needs. We can make our own choices, which that's a whole nother process, probably
Yeah.
another podcast,
Oh gosh.
like,
Well, it's
because
woven into all of this.
yeah, but it's like when we can learn to look within, which we were never supposed to do, um, that all comes as, and it's a lot to learn. And I want the viewers to hear that we've done this. So if you're just starting, it's not impossible. It's not
Yeah.
as complicated as what we maybe sound like with all of the things that we're talking about today. But the thing is, we can simplify it all by thinking of it this way. We can check in with one little part of us at a time and meet that part wherever they're at in that pain, in that ball of fire that feels like it's gonna, like we're gonna have an emotional breakdown and a emotional explosion, and really we're having breaking through programming, breaking through denial, breaking through just having that ability for that part to feel something for once in their, little minds. It's our mind. It's all one person we are. But anyway, like the whole thing is to simplify it because that part is a child, the part of us that was hurt, the part of us that doesn't know how to do anything different than what they've done all these years, and thank them for protecting us. Thank them for
Yeah.
holding that memory, holding those emotions, and thanking our body for, the marvelous things, and thanking God for what He created our minds to do, to be able to dissociate it all away. And the
Yeah.
emotions are stored back here, and let them come forward. Let the parts of us come forward and embrace them and learn to go from self-hatred to acceptance to loving them,
Really
uh,
loving.
really loving them. Um, what would be something that you would want the listeners to hear
The big takeaway
after,
for today.
yeah,
Kind
the
of like
big takeaway for
distill it all.
today?
We've talked about a ton of different things today. We did not plan to get all these different things,
No, but it's been great because
but I
this
think
was not
it
even
all links together.
planned.
It all links together. I think I know it can be challenging to do this, but it's uh, well worth the effort to um, grow to be okay with it being a process. Being kind to yourself and say, look, I've got limits as to how much I can deal with today. There's a whole hell of a lot there. And one of the things I used to tell myself, I still do sometimes. So I say, the only thing that's infinite is God. There is an end to the shit that I've been through. I will get to the end. It's a whole lot, but it is finite because only God is infinite. So there's that. And grow into a space where you can uh, be okay with, I did what I needed to do today. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to make myself a pizza or something nourishing if you can manage it, and I'm going to, okay. And what I found is that uh, another analogy I had was, I've got my dinner plate. There's things that, and working with God, I found that there are things that God wanted on that plate for me to do today and stuff that does not belong on my plate today. I would sometimes try to put things on there that didn't need to be there, and I get stressed out. I would sometimes try to take things off the plate that I didn't want to deal with, and I'd get stressed out that way. But when I looked at what I had to do today, and this is not concrete. It wasn't like I was doing like a checklist each day. It was just sort of like I had this sense of like, okay, I need to look at something today. And then I felt when I worked with it, it was done. And I said, okay, I've done my homework for today. And then I could go on and do other stuff. And if I didn't keep up with my homework, things kind of backpiled and then I started to fall apart, and it's okay to take breaks. They're going to be built-in breaks with the rhythm of all this. But that said, the things can be very intense up front. You're going to make it. I'm praying for you. Sherry's praying for you. You're going to make it. It will be okay. It's okay. God has everything. As divided as I am, I'm in God's hands.
Very well said. Yeah, and safety takes a long time to build internally, externally, but we can do it in small increments.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today and sharing a little of your story, but also the amazing things that you've learned and that you shared with everyone today, so that they can have some tools and they can have more of themselves and make friends with themselves first and foremost, because it is a journey and we don't just start lifting heavy weights. And um, I love that you brought so much to the viewers today in ways that they can find that they can do all things through Christ. And I know for some of us that's hard to hear. Some of my parts are still working on that too. But I really believe that the more we can connect with the parts of us, and it's not maybe like full integration, but it's like we actually become stronger together internally. And that's where our safety comes from, and that's where our autonomy and identity comes from. Is even if we just have one part that believes in God and has accepted Jesus, we have that identity. And even if all of our other parts aren't connected with that yet, we don't have to have a church lady or like this person that says, okay, we got to do this. Like everybody's got to get saved. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, uh, thank you for listening to the Arise and Shine podcast. And thank you again for being here. God bless you.